session, this webinar, is featuring the Cultural Navigator, and our topic today is fostering inclusion in the workplace. I'd like to get us started since we're at the top of the hour, and welcome everyone for joining. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Lynne Tarter, and I head up the solutions team for TMC, a Berlitz company. I'll be your moderator today, and my team member, Lakashia Ward, and I will handle all your questions that you type into the question box on the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We're pleased to partner today with Bettina Neidhardt. Bettina is an executive consultant with TMC and a European business contact for us. They're based in Switzerland. So we're excited to have her join today. I wanted to touch base on just a few housekeeping items before we begin. In order to reduce background noise, we have muted everyone during the presentation. We do want you to participate, though, and ask any questions you might have in the questions box. And you can enter those at any time during the presentation. We'll reserve 30 minutes at the end of this session for a moderated question and answer period. And our presentation will last approximately 30 minutes. So all told, you will be done in 1 hour from now with our webinar today. We'll be recording today's session, and after the webinar, we'll share the recording with you by email back to your the email ID that you used at registration. And finally, we're letting you know up front that when we switch presenters, you may see a pause in the presentation. So just go ahead and stick with us if you would, please. All right, we appreciate that you're here with us today. Let's get started. We'd first like to understand who's on the line with us today with our first poll. So if you could let us know what your organizational role is by choosing from the following options: talent management, organizational development, training, a business line leader, or other. And if you choose other, please do write your response in the question box on your right side panel. And we'll give you just a few more seconds. Choose your radio button that indicates your selection. And let's see, we have both business line leaders and training department folks on the line with us today. We also have about 20% other. So thank you so much for joining. We appreciate that you're here with us today. I want to hand the session over to our subject matter expert, Bettina Neidhardt. Bettina?
Yes, thank you very much, Lynn. And welcome everyone to our webinar titled Fostering Inclusion in the Workplace. My name is Bettina Neidhardt, and I look forward to exploring this topic with you today. We will spend approximately the next 30 minutes exploring practical inclusion strategies, cultural competence, and how to leverage the Cultural Navigator to better prepare leaders and employees to succeed in a multicultural, diverse, and global environment. So just kind of, looking at some fundamental information, companies really no longer view diversity and inclusion efforts as separate from the other business practices. They do recognize that a diverse workforce can differentiate them from their competitors and can help capture new clients if an environment of inclusion supports the value of diversity. So inclusion skills are crucial in today's workplace for any business to succeed in implementing their strategic goals and initiatives. Mergers and acquisitions, global business growth and innovation initiatives, specific D&I or inclusive leadership corporate initiatives all benefit significantly from a highly culturally aware workforce and inclusive mindset. According to a recent Forbes study, significant progress has been made to build and retain a diverse workforce, but there are still impediments to companies' efforts. So inclusion is the end state, of course, to which we aspire, But while the responsibility for the success of the company's diversity and inclusion efforts lies with senior management, really every one of us as part of the organization has the capability to create inclusion in our workplace, to optimize our immediate environment, and this on a daily basis. So let's just look again at a basic definition of inclusion. It's just to ensure that there's a common ground before looking at practice implementation tips and some concrete examples using the Cultural Navigator. Inclusion in the workplace is a workplace environment, talents, backgrounds, and perspectives of all employees. Just as a reminder to all of ourselves, diversity really is a given today and inclusion is optional. So you really can't optimize diversity without inclusion. Many leaders agree, and we have some sample quotes here. Many leaders agree that diversity is a given in their business environment today, but that inclusion practices from a practical, everyday implementation standpoint still need to be significantly improved in order to optimize impact on strategic initiatives. So let's take a look at the different levels of our diverse environments and our personal journey to inclusion. To start with, let's look at our practical inclusion journey graph. So for example, in quadrant A, up at the lower left, if our organization has low diversity and high inclusion, we very likely have a homogeneous group that actually may work really well together, but overall they could be missing out on fresh perspectives and innovation opportunities. And inversely, in quadrant B, if we have high diversity and low inclusion, we have a mixed group of people with no cohesion. So still today, actually many organizations do aim for a diverse group of employees, but then do not put enough effort into creating an environment of inclusion. As a result, they may have a difficult time retaining individuals, and they may be losing out on valuable opportunities to impact their, well, for example, in innovation initiatives. The beginning efforts of D&I we see in quadrant C. So organizations that have low diversity and low inclusion can start to recognize and value differences. And for example, by using a tool such as the Cultural Navigator to provide information on differences and practical tips on bridging those differences. As diversity and inclusion levels grow, we start to identify exclusionary practices and behaviors and start to address them in a more targeted way out in the culture altogether, viewing exclusion behaviors, of course, as detrimental to progress. So moving on to quadrant D, in the upper right-hand corner, where we maximize our inclusion practices to impact the team and or the organization. High levels of diversity and inclusion will offer a real and competitive advantage in the marketplace by providing differentiated and better solutions as all employees are actively engaged in collaboration. So once we have largely incorporated inclusion practices and leaders are role modeling these on a daily basis, then we have a real chance of sustaining a high level of diversity and high inclusion, which is our goal or desired end state. It is, however, of course, everyone's job to live inclusion in our daily work environment. To achieve true and sustainable inclusion practices on a personal level, we must value differences by practicing open-mindedness and appreciation, eliminate exclusionary behaviors. We can do that by ensuring that our communication and interaction in voice, body, and language include everyone as our number one, and ensure that we practice this on a daily basis, leading to fewer and fewer missed opportunities and eventually eliminating exclusionary behaviors. So before we go on, let's have another question for you though. Before we look at some concrete tips to raise inclusion awareness and skills, let us know what best describes your organization's practice around inclusion. So choosing from the following options. So just choose inclusion at my company is, number one, integrated into my organization's overall business strategy. Number two, managed on an ad hoc basis by HR. It is common practice in some functions, maybe less in others. Not completely defined at this time, or other. And if you're checking other, then please put a little more information in the question box. So let's see what your answers are. Okay, thank you very much. And this is very promising. So we can see that 80% answered integrated into your organization's overall business strategy. That's fantastic. And 20% also very encouraging. Common practice in some functions and less in others. Great, thank you very much. I think what we're going to look at now is going to be also very helpful then to get very practical. From our quick poll, it looks like we still do have a little bit of work ahead. So how can we fundamentally sharpen our inclusion skills by using the Cultural Navigator? So there are three possibilities. One of them would be to adopt a non-judgmental terminology from the COI, cultural preferences, and integrating cultural preferences into our everyday terminology. We could use the aggregate report to better understand the preferences of our colleagues. And of course, we can use the gap analysis to better understand others' cultural preferences. So let's just go to a very quick review of the cultural dimensions. The three dimensions in the cultural orientation model are the interaction style, the thinking style, how we think and conceptualize, and our sense of self, how we view ourselves, and how we are motivated at work. And let's just pick out one example. There are 6 continua in the interaction style dimension. One of these continua reflects a fixed or fluid preference for time, or in other words, how we prefer to use time. A fixed orientation defines and manages time precisely, and a fluid orientation views time as a loose and abundant resource. And this will actually impact how they behave within specific situations, such as meetings or conference calls. So one of our colleagues, for example, may have a fixed preference for time, and another colleague may have a fluid preference. This will definitely change the interaction for us, depending on their as well as our own preference. The Cultural Navigator provides practical applications to help us learn how to work effectively together with same, similar, or opposing work preferences. So before we look at some concrete examples, though, let's go to Lakashia for information on the COI assessment and the results report. Lakashia?
Thank you, Bettina, and hello to everyone. I'm looking forward to showing you some features of the Cultural Navigator that will help you to support inclusion in the workplace. Bear with me while I switch my screen. At this time, everyone should see a view of the Cultural Navigator platform. Just a little bit of background. The Cultural Navigator is an online learning platform that can be used either as a self-paced online tool or as part of a blended solution supporting face-to-face programs. Right now, I'm going to demonstrate how you can access your COI report. Once you set up your Cultural Navigator account and have completed your COI assessment, you'll be able to access your COI report from the CN landing page, as you'll see here, by clicking on the COM model underneath Bridging Cultural Gaps. A summary view of your COI assessment will appear. Just to help users understand their personal work preferences, we've simplified the dimension terminology to how users interact, which is their interaction style, process information, thinking style, and how they view themselves in their work environment, which is the sense of self. To get a more in-depth knowledge of your report, you simply click on the View Report icon at the top. The first thing you'll notice about each report is that we provide a high-level analysis of your preferences by dimension over in this section here. Users can quickly scan their preferences, read up about how each may impact their interaction style, thinking style, or sense of self, and then move on to a more comprehensive analysis by selecting one of the preference links, as you see here, or by scrolling down the page to review information on the continua. When users are ready to read more information about each of their preferences, they can simply click on the highlighted bar here in blue to switch each continua to a debrief view. This view gives users more definition around their preference. It also offers new information on common challenges and recommendations for bridging cultural gaps. There's information that provides case studies and links to suggested resources to learn more about one's personal orientation. In addition, users can click on the audio icon to listen and learn more about how this orientation may impact their work environment. Another function we offer users is the capability to download the COI report for use offline. By clicking on the graphic wheel located on the right-hand side of the page, users can download, save, and print a hard copy of their full report. However, if they only want a report on a specific dimension, there's an icon that usually sits to the right side of the high-level overview where they can download the PDF for that specific dimension as well. So at this point in time, I'd like to return to Bettina Neidhardt, who will now talk about the use of the team gap analysis in team aggregate reports to help foster inclusion.
Great, thank you, Lakashia. So let's look at a practical example. And in this specific case, let's look at a snapshot of the hierarchy and equality preferences within an aggregate report. Let's just go to the next slide. So we can move to the next slide. There we go. Perfect. Thank you very much. So here we are looking at, as I mentioned, this is just a quick snapshot directly from the Cultural Navigator. And we're looking at hierarchy, equality preferences within an aggregate report. Let's assume that you generated this report for one of your cross-functional international teams. In this specific example, you left your own COI results out of the report, for reasons, you may want to show it to the group to discuss optimal ways of working together. And let's just look at this specific group of, let's assume you have 18 colleagues all together. And what do we see here? This report, this aggregate report, shows that due to the differences in this particular group, the group members may experience some tension in regards to the value of the status, for example, of an individual, in regards to decision-making and representation of the group, possibly expectation of some group members to openly relate feedback to others, regardless of the difference in authority or rank, potentially the distribution of tasks that need to be accomplished according to the roles and the level of authority of group members, and the group members' equal access to resources and information. This particular group could benefit from exploring how the different tendencies can be optimally leveraged vis-a-vis internal and external challenges, and also specifically whether the group would benefit from developing, either at the onset or in the interim, developing guidelines and behavioral norms to improve the understanding of roles, status differentiation, decision-making, accountability, openness to feedback, and equitable distribution and access to resources. Now, this particular report, how can we relate this back to inclusion behaviors? Well, by developing a deeper sense of understanding for the 5 members in the group who have and potentially display stronger equality preferences, we as an individual can develop a more diplomatic and balanced approach with this group. As one practical example, we could support improving information flow to the group overall and thereby providing more of a balance between the real or the perceived ranks. This would provide an improved sense of inclusion to all members of this group and resonate with the 5 members with a strong equality preference, as it respects everyone's right to relevant information equally. So that was one example. Let's have another practical example, and let's look at a snapshot of a fluid and fixed preference within a generic HR group. And this time, when we ran this report, we included our own COI results and preference, which is in this case a strong fluid preference. So this aggregate is actually very helpful if we are meeting, for example, with an HR team or members of an HR team to discuss implementation of a strategic talent initiative. What specific insights can we now gain here that will help us better accommodate the preferences of the colleagues or the partners that we are meeting with? We can see that the majority of this group shares a preference for a fixed orientation. So this may yield a dominant group culture that potentially emphasizes punctuality and or time management, and a focus on meeting deadlines and establishing schedules or timelines. However, we do have a small minority of the group that has the opposite preference. So while the dominant tendency may ultimately define the cultural or behavioral norm of the group, the potential contributions and value of the minority may be overlooked. So this group could benefit from exploring, number one, the value of higher degrees of adaptability and flexibility in changing circumstances, or the benefits of staying focused on the quality of the meeting and the issue at hand rather than the time and the deadline factor. And we, as the individual with the gap in this case, and here we are, as you can see, part of the minority, we may benefit from better preparation to ensure timeliness, both for meeting times as well as the overall project and milestone accomplishments. And we would show more respect towards the 75% of the group members for whom this is important or even critical. We could also diplomatically suggest that the what, or the actual issue at hand, as well as the quality of the issue or project, should be explored more deeply to provide a balance. This, however, only if we see a slight push or tendency towards the when and the timelines in the group. Now, how can we take this, again, and relate it back to inclusion behaviors? Well, in this specific case, by developing a deeper understanding of the majority preference in the group who clearly display a fixed orientation, we could emphasize that we respect the focus on timelines and getting steps done within a given time frame. If we did this, it would provide an improved sense of respect and inclusion for the fixed time preference members of the group, as well as role model our flexibility for the few, but important, fluid time preference members. And by the way, don't forget, you can also download the full report anytime. Just look for the button in the upper right-hand corner on the Cultural Navigator when you are running your reports, just as a side note. So let's go to one more practical example and see how the Cultural Navigator can really help us on a daily basis to improve our inclusion behaviors. And actually 2 more examples within one dimension, within the thinking style dimension. Let's look at multi and single focus preference. So first of all, in the first snapshot, here we have a team aggregate report that we ran. This one, a corporate cross-functional team, where we have removed our individual COI results from the aggregate. And this group suggests a shared, strong, single focus orientation. But there are a few outliers, 17%. on the multi-focus preference side. So this group may develop a strong cultural identity and corresponding behavioral norms that emphasize structuring and sequencing tasks, issues, and possibly even relationships, and a focus on and discussion of one topic at a time. What could the group benefit from? Well, possibly exploring potential gaps and blind spots in external relations, particularly the tendency to appear over-structured and inflexible. Rely on sequential processing when parallel processing may actually be quicker or simpler. So this is an important insight that should be addressed either at the onset of the meeting or project or as needed when progress seems to be hindered by opposing preferences and impacted behaviors. So that's the first snapshot. The second snapshot, the gap analysis that we did for ourselves and 2 other colleagues on, again, single and multi-focus. And here, of course, we can see that we need to be mindful of a potential cultural gap with our 2 colleagues with a strong and very strong single focus orientation, particularly when processing information at work. Based on these orientations, our colleagues probably prefer to process information sequentially and focus on one task or relationship at a time. And dealing with interruptions or unscheduled and unexpected events likely will be less important to them than focusing and concentrating on a single issue. Now, in contrast, our own strong multi-focus orientation indicates that we prefer to focus on different types of information simultaneously in work situations. We tend to prefer processing information in a parallel rather than sequential manner, and we actually welcome interruptions. And style switching to a more single focus approach could potentially be difficult for us. And so when working with people who have very strong single focus orientations, we may become bored and feel inefficient when we're asked to focus on one issue at a time. Or we could even be perceived as disrespectful by people who expect us to give them our full attention. Just think about a situation where a colleague is carefully covering a step-by-step approach while you just want to go to the result and the other issues impacting the project. So to address these concerns, we may need to increase our comfort, potentially significantly, with focusing on one issue or problem at a time. We may have to limit the number of changes that we introduce at a given time. So how can we relate this back to inclusion behaviors? So, there are different ways. By better accepting the strong single focus orientation in the team aggregate report and better preparing for the interaction by using the Cultural Navigator resources, and also looking at the gap analysis for ourselves and 2 colleagues, better preparation and more willingness to style switch may go a long way. So just to show you again how to easily access the aggregate and the gap analyses on the Cultural Navigator, let me hand back over to Lakashia.
Thank you, Bettina, and hello everyone again. I'm going to take this time now to show you how the Cultural Navigator can be accessed so that users can create their own team gap analysis and team aggregate reports. You should be seeing the My Network page of the Cultural Navigator. In order to access a team gap analysis or team aggregate report, users need to either be a member of a team or create a team of their own. Within the My Network section, users can easily see which teams they are members of. If a user wishes to create a team, they can do so by simply clicking on the Create a Team icon located on the left side of the screen and inviting colleagues to join their team. For the purposes of this demonstration, I will select a team that I'm already a member of. And you will notice that although I'm not the owner of this team, I still have the ability to view the team gap analysis and create a team aggregate report. So let's go into this demo team that's been developed. If I select the team gap analysis icon at the top, I will be given the option of selecting one or more of my team members to add to this report. I can also choose one or all of the 3 dimensions for comparison, and I'm going to select all 3 to compare. The Team Gap Analysis Report warns of potential cultural gaps and offers suggestions on how to overcome these gaps or prepare for the impact of these gaps. This view gives users an overall scope of where team members fall along the continua. Gaps that the users may experience with his or her team or selected colleagues are highlighted in red. And when selected, a window will open providing a list of the team members that fall under that particular preference. In addition, a debrief section is included on the cultural gap and provides information on challenges and recommendations for bridging the gap. Lastly, the resource section provides links to further readings. At the top of the page, you'll find that you can see, well, here you have the option of downloading a PDF of one or all 3 dimensions, again, as I showed you before. You can simply click on the link for the download full report or the download PDF, which will give you the option of selecting one of the dimensions, in this case, interaction style. Now let's take a look at the team aggregate report. Using the same team, I'm going to select the team aggregate report icon. Unlike the team gap analysis, you'll not be able to select certain members of your team. This report provides an aggregate of all the members on this particular team and will only include those team members that have completed the full COI assessment. You do, however, have the option to exclude yourself from the report. The overview of the report will provide the user with guidelines around interpreting the report. And of course, we can provide a COA certified practitioner to conduct a detailed analysis of the report at the client's request. At the bottom of the overview section, the demographic makeup of the client is captured. However, please note that the statistics will only reflect those individuals who have entered the information in their profile, as this is optional and not mandatory for users to complete. The demographics include gender, age, nationality, function, and the location of the users within your organization. The use of this data can be essential to helping you gather information for key areas of focus, and of course, bring you closer to creating an inclusive environment. Let's take a look at the report view. In addition to the demographics, the main difference between the team gap analysis and the team aggregate report is that the team aggregate report focuses solely on the group dynamic and not the individual. It is based on general tendencies inherent in the specific preferences of the group members. Looking at the team as a whole, you can help to establish how to work with your team, and the report allows a full view of the orientations. This way, users can assess and differentiate the areas of concern or synergy. As Bettina mentioned earlier, users can utilize the debrief section to understand how the differences and synergies amongst the group can be leveraged. And as with all of the reports, you can download a PDF version of the individual dimensions or all 3. This concludes the demonstration of the Cultural Navigator for today, and I'd like to hand the reins back to Bettina Neidhardt.
Great, thank you, Lakashia. So hopefully this is helpful, and you can see how easily you can create your aggregate reports and your gap analyses. So before we move on, let's have another polling question for you and see if this is helpful and actually what specifically is helpful to you. So the following resources are or will be the most relevant and helpful for me to improve my own inclusion behaviors. We have some choices. Do you think the gap analysis reports will be helpful, or the team or group aggregate reports, or both of these, or none of these? If you could just let us know what your choices are. Again, it's the gap analysis or the aggregate report, both or none. And let's see. Well, that's very promising. So great, we have 20% on the team and group aggregate reports and both of these. Absolutely, because depending obviously on the interaction that you are preparing for with your colleagues, clients, partners, both of them will be very useful. And hopefully today we were able to show you some more detailed ways also of approaching those and using them in a very practical daily environment. So last but not least, let's summarize a few actions. And how can we actually personally leverage the Cultural Navigator to support our own inclusion behaviors on a daily basis? We can ensure that all team members complete the COI assessment and review their results, and hopefully also make the results, of course, available to us to be able to compare and to run the team aggregates. Frequently, daily if possible, again, run either a quick instant colleague, country, or function gap analysis. I mean, it really doesn't take long to run these reports. They're quite valuable. Choose one or two key orientations that stand out the most, like we did with our examples today. Click on those and quickly read the debrief, and particularly the challenges. The challenges are great because in very bullet style, you have the key issues as well as tips on how to address those issues. You could decide then to style shift or be more accommodating to the preference of the person or the people you will be interacting with when we are better prepared. We could create teams of our most frequent colleague groups on the Cultural Navigator, run a team aggregate as often as necessary and look at the results frequently, and every time we are looking at them, pick out a different orientation as needed. And of course, encourage the use of these Cultural Navigator resources available to you, integrating the key findings of the aggregates or the gap reports that you're running into your daily work. And naturally, role modeling respectful behaviors towards other preferences. So let's finish this part of our webinar today with some related quotes from Einstein, Jung, and somebody unknown. And thank you very much for your attention and participation. And at this point, I would like to hand over again to Lynne.
Okay, Bettina, thanks so much. A couple of quick questions to wrap up our session today. If you could just give us an idea of what features of the Cultural Navigator do you find most enticing, most value add, the overall updated look, the ease of navigation, customizable user interface, the updated cultural orientations indicator assessment, or collaborative learning tools. Which one of those, as you looked at today or have seen in the past, do you think are going to be most exciting to you to launch within your organization or to use? Go ahead and choose, and Lakashia, let's see what everybody says. All right. The side, customizable user interface and the updated cultural orientations indicator are tied. Thank you so much. We have another question that looks at the opposite of that. and that is which area of the Cultural Navigator do you think is going to be more challenging as you work with the organizational interface in terms of how you use it within your organization? Is it perhaps some marketing materials to support your organization's use of it, getting the message out to your organization, perhaps driving usage, and maybe answering questions about the web tool? And if you have other questions or other thoughts, go ahead and type those into the chat box or the question box. So let's see what everybody says, Lakashia. Okay, driving usage of the Cultural Navigator. Again, we see that as the top on our list, and your client strategist or we can help you work through that. Also, answering questions about the web tool seem to be definitely interest to you. So thank you so much. I wanted to close today's session with just a few reminders about the Cultural Navigator as a learning platform. There are 4 key pillars that we built it on. The first is that it's individualized to every individual learner through some areas called interest areas, and the learning areas also are customized based on your completion of those areas. So next we have the collaborative aspect of the learning platform, and that is really designed to make sure that peer-to-peer learning is occurring on a regular basis and that you connect to a broader network within your organization. The third pillar is that it is relevant and adapted for each organization. So we have customization features that are included in every license level so that you can reach a critical mass exposure to the Cultural Navigator, and then representative of all of our products and service offerings through blended learning. So customizable learning paths and user-selective interest areas are representative of all of our product offering across TMC and Berlitz's offerings. So if I could also add that we have a monthly series of webinars, and next month we have our webinar scheduled for July 30th, and the focus that month is communication skill building, featuring the Cultural Navigator, and Anne-Marie Salmon will be our subject matter expert for that next session. So we welcome you back for that session. At this point, I'll close the webinar thanking you sincerely for being part of today's session. If you're interested in reviewing or ordering the Guide for Inclusive Leaders, it is available through the help desk at tmcorp.com. Email ID, please, in the subject line, say the Inclusive Leader Guide. And we thank you very much, and we'll close the formal part of today's session and go to answer the questions that we received during today's session. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day. We will